Perch is here to break it down. Every tale and every crown. Comics by Perch, it's your guide. Dive in deep,
Hey
don't run
everybody, this is
and
Perch.
hide.
I bet many people in this audience have experienced this problem. Just a hunch. Let me read this mail from a listener to the show, and you tell me. And this guy is looking for advice, so let's give him some. It says, "Dear Perch, I'm Kevin. Baby Kevin stumbled onto my comic stack and started pulling them out of the bags and boards. One particular issue was Heat Seeker Exposed by Titan. A cover, a cover, the A cover. I don't like Dynamite does the same thing. I don't like the A B. I guess it makes sense, but I always hated that as a retailer. It's like A cover, B cover, C cover. Fuck. I don't know if I don't have a better option. Just drove me crazy. Anyway, so Mrs. Kevin found this, and I'm in the doghouse. Okay. If you are familiar with this cover, maybe you'll understand why. I've tried explaining to her every which way that these are simply books and I don't have a wandering eye. I don't know why I pick up the issues with the sexy ladies. I think you do. I think we all do. My brain just sees it and says, yes, this is the one. Have you or your fans ever been in a situation like this? Which part? The buying comics with sexy lady covers? Yes. I think everybody has been in that situation. That's why they make them, for sure. It is funny. I mean, you could tell, and back in the '90s, there was a lot of kind of cheesecake type stuff, but it didn't feel like the comic artists really knew what they were doing half the time. What I mean by that is, you would get Jim Lee drawing Rogue in the Savage Land, and you get that kind of stuff. But the covers didn't know how to do is man, there's gonna be like a couple of you that really know what I'm talking about. The rest of you are just gonna be confused. But the cheesecake covers that they would do were clumsy, I think is the best way to put it. They were from a now they have it down. I mean, you can get a kind of art germ cover, you can get some of the other covers out there that really highlights sex appeal. But in the '90s, they're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, and some of it stuck and some of it didn't. And I think it was always funny. But you'd see on the shelf certain covers, and I knew what, like, I'm taking them out of the box. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't order near enough of this. Because we didn't have anywhere close to the kind of insights as to what comics we were going to receive and what the covers look like and any of that back then. And so you pull issues out. I remember there's a Daredevil cover. Somebody will remember this. And just the way it was positioned, I think it was a John Romita Jr. cover, actually. It just highlighted the sexuality of the character. In this case, I think it was Typhoid Mary. And it's like, this is going to fly off the shelves. And sure enough, it did. But anyway, let's finish the bill. I think you're actually asking, like, how do you deal with like an irate wife who's looking at your sexy lady covers and wondering what's going on? Anyway. How would be the best way, and back to the mail. It says, how would be the best way to absolve me of my crimes? My wife views this as an affront to our relationship and accuses me of objectification and that my values are out of place. But I love my wife. Well, sure, we all do. We don't all love your wife, but we all love our wives. So keep the videos. I look forward to them every day. Top 3 of my comic YouTube creators. Well, thank you very much for that. Well, look, put it this way. At least you've got I don't know if actually this helps either. You get an extra dynamic when you have daughters. When you have a son, maybe it's just as bad, just from a different angle. When you have daughters, you start getting the line of like, would you want your daughters to see this? Now, the way I dealt with that with, Little Perch on Littler Perch is that I started getting Little Perch into anime and manga really early. And there you get a blend of wholesome and cheesecake simultaneously. That was really helpful to get my wife on board with it. I'm revealing my tricks here, but something like Ranma or Lum, they have plenty of cheesecake and silly elements, but they also just come across so wholesome. It's like if you're watching the Ranma show, you've got this whole dynamic of Akane is trying to find her way, and then she's got this crush on the Dr. Tofu character and everything else. And you're looking at that going, oh, this is like a wholesome little cartoon. And then every now and then, the tops come off and Ranma's running around with her boobs hanging out, or and so by doing that, that helped, let's say, desensitize my wife to the idea that, hey, this stuff's there, but it's not all kind of, just perverted. I think if I'm giving one piece of advice, it's this: if you have somebody who's relatively new to comics, meaning your wife, your girlfriend, whoever, you need to very quickly separate from them in their minds that you've got a comic cover by J. Scott Campbell, and maybe there's some question about where the organs have gone, versus like, Playboy or Penthouse or Hustler. I don't even know if they still make those magazines, but you need to separate those two, because for people who are unfamiliar with comics, in particular cheesecake type covers and that kind of thing, the perception of somebody new to comics is that the cover is representative of the interior of the book. And in a lot of cases, I mean, as we all know, it's not. It's rarely even the same artist. And my wife went through this plenty of, she'd see, and this is it for whatever reason. It took a long time for her to get this. Of like, she'd pick up an Alex Ross cover and go, it's because very early on in our relationship, I gave her Kingdom Come, and it was a really nice painted, excellent cover, and and the interiors were the same artist. So you had this really great comic, and so it doesn't make sense to her that years later you've got Alex Ross cover and interior complete trash art. Not always, but sometimes. And so so keep in mind, like, your girlfriend, your wife is picking up this comic. There's a bunch of TNA on the cover, and it's natural for them to assume that inside the comic is just more TNA and more kind of silliness. And so they're going to view the whole product as, objectifying women and everything else. So this is a game of inches. You got to just kind of slowly wear people down. First thing first is you got to establish that, hey, actually, this is a normal superhero comic, and it's not just, crazy porn. Unless, of course, you are, I don't know, maybe you're reading Faust, or you're reading, and nobody's reading Faust anymore, but maybe, are you reading, Legend of the Overfiend? Like, I don't know what, you're reading, but the vast majority of comics with pervy covers do not have pervy interiors. So first you establish that. Now you're really down to the covers. Why do you buy this cover? And in that instance, this is where you can play the collector's card, and you can play it truthfully, because the sexy covers tend to be worth more, do better. And so then it becomes a financial decision. Now, your wife or girlfriend is still going to roll their eyes and look at you like you're a lunatic and a pervert, but all the same, it is going to portray it's going to put you in at least a better, standing to have this argument. The last thing is, keep your comics away from your kids. Like, I mean, them pulling out of the bag, start throwing them around the room is nightmare fuel for a lot of people. So just, this is where a locking box, or, something, a short box that actually clicks together, so it's not as easy to get those things out. That's another big help. But I would take that advice. And now the question is, what advice do all of you have? Because my guess is some of you have encountered this situation. You've had to explain kind of sexy comics to a girlfriend or a wife, or a daughter. I don't know. How have you done it? Is there a magic trick there? To me, disarming it is still the easiest thing to do. It's like, you take some of those Zenoscope books, and it's like, wow, this cover looks pretty perverted. And it's like, yeah, but open it up. And it's like, oh, there's nothing in here. There's nothing. Okay. To me, that is the fastest way to get the conversation onto a more manageable tone. Again, this doesn't work if you've got, actual, you know, pervy kind of manga or comics or whatever else. I mean, if, if you, it depends. It depends on what the interior content is. But that's what I would recommend starting with, and then you take it from there. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you experienced this situation? Do you have any great advice to help this guy out? Let us know. And thanks for listening.